Welcome to yet another episode of Smarketing for Marketers. Today we have Marina Erulkar. She's the principal and founder of Hamstead Solutions, located out of Boston, Massachusetts. As a strategic consultant to mid-sized companies, her comprehensive B2B and B2C strategies help companies turn declining revenue into steady revenue growth. She was recently featured in the Entrepreneur magazine, where she talked about the role of big data for small businesses. Before we get into the interview, I'm so excited to speak to you today, Marina. I met you 9 years ago, where we shared the same office space. And at that time, we were working in different roles. And I was just starting my career in marketing back then. And I remember our water cooler conversations around marketing. And at that time, you had mentioned that digital marketing is definitely the way to go for businesses when it wasn't a thing. Here we are in 2022. I also want to mention that really played a role in me honing my skills further in digital marketing, and here I am. So over to you, Marina. Tell me, how did Hamstead Solutions came about?
Well, first, you know what, I'm so glad to hear that those conversations, and I remember so many of them, that those conversations were helpful, and they've brought you to this marvelous point in your career. Great to hear that. So I got started. I got started sort of accidentally, to be honest, and similarly from a comment that I wasn't expecting. So in 2009, I was working for a mid-sized company. We had a new CEO. He was tasked with doubling our revenue and scaling the company efficiently all within a year. Quite a challenge in 2009. It's a challenge typically at any time. 2009 represented particularly strong headwinds. So he walked into my office and said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, and maybe you can help me. And I went about assessing the company with the proprietary methodology that I had developed through my career in technology and analytic and consulting companies. And I delivered this strategy with prioritized recommendations that essentially defined how we would achieve that doubling of revenue goal that had been set for him. And he looked up from this comprehensive strategy and said, I don't know what you're doing here. This is an entire business, and you should be doing this full time. And I started having some conversations to see if this was a good idea for me and if this was a good idea at the time. And I just happened to get 2 clients through those due diligence conversations, and off I went.
And I remember 2008-9 was the period of recession as well. So a lot of people were laid off, and so what a time for you to open your own agency around growth.
And among the reasons why I was doing such concerted due diligence at the time, because of course, there was so much reality around us at the time, as you said, that people were being laid off, companies were going out of business, and it turned out to be a great time for the kinds of things that I've wanted to do with my clients' companies, and as well, it gave me the opportunity to develop some really compelling business cases, and some really compelling results from that time.
I'm pretty sure a lot of companies would need you now as well, because we are already talking about recession. So I guess, it is indicative of, the time we are in right now, with so much uncertainty. So companies need someone to help them look into the future before they can even make decisions, which would help them stay steady and thrive in these times. So,
well, and even if you think about the times when we don't have an economy complicating situations for businesses, just with the continual speed of innovation, that can have a ripple effect through different industries. So if a competitor does something that's very bold and captures attention, that change can transform an industry and the companies that do business within it. So there's sort of different kinds of shifts that occur, and my approach is to ensure that my clients make the most of that moment, even when the challenges are looming large. There's always opportunity within those challenges.
This is a nice segue to my second question to you. I recently read this report from McKinsey where they stated that during the first wave of COVID, the crisis really exposed many companies' resilience to adapting, pivoting, or perhaps even innovating. What, according to you, are successful levers a company can pull to future proof their businesses from future disruptions?
I'll just say before I answer the question for you that I can understand how some companies didn't pivot quickly, especially initially, because our expectations for COVID were set that it would be over in 3 months and then life
Right.
would return to normal. So I think it's understandable that some companies didn't make a quick turn because they expected that they'd have to reverse it. And perhaps even before they had completed that turn. So I can understand those companies that decided to ride out those 3 months. And then, given how expectations continue to be set, the 3 months after that. But with all of that aside, to answer your question, what would have served those companies is a combination of customer intelligence and ongoing measurement. So, from ongoing measurement, companies can recognize that a change has occurred. There may be some inflection point or a disruption in trend lines that warrants some assessment. So it's likely that companies would have recognized the changes in customers' needs through COVID and had the opportunity to pivot, even despite how our expectations were set. And when companies understand their customers, so they understand customers' needs, their interests, most importantly, in my opinion, what behavior means, then they're able to understand what those changes signify. So, with ongoing measurement and customer understanding combined, companies are able to recognize changes and then meet those new needs. And most importantly, companies can create opportunities. So, as I was saying earlier, whatever the source of the disruption, whether it comes from the company itself or the industry or the larger environment, the larger economy, when companies can recognize that a change has occurred and understand what that change means for their customers, they're less likely to be subject to disruptions, and they're in better positions to develop opportunities from those changes.
Yeah, so to your point, every company should be looking at it from how it's impacting their customers and making strategies to really evolve their, the way their processes work to really accommodate customer needs and their pain points. From a marketing standpoint, COVID really resulted in how we were marketing and selling to our customer base, right? Understanding that, we won't be able to do any in-person events. So we had to really pivot and move to a virtual event scenario. And that really, was a big change from a marketing standpoint. And, email marketing is definitely the way to go for many B2B companies. So that remained consistent. But then there were other strategies around social media and so forth that we really needed to think about and put more money behind it. So that really kind of comes back to that question that your existing customers are your best salespeople. If you can really touch on the mechanism a company should put in place to see around the corners, I'm going to quote one of your recent posts on LinkedIn on customer attrition. where you said with that one behavioral signal, we could effectively see around corners, and instead of scrambling to replace or win back lost customers, we retain them and their associated revenue. Can you really expound on what you mean by that?
Sure. And first, I'm so glad that you're enjoying the posts. Thank you for mentioning that. So this was work that I did with an enterprise client who was losing significant revenue to customer attrition. And the intelligence that I developed was about the common behavior. It was a disruption in that trend line that preceded customer attrition. So we could recognize when this was a B2C client, when companies exhibited that telltale behavior, we knew that they were looking for the exits. So from that very important insight, we did see around the corners, and we could intervene before those customers exited. And that was the most effective way to return revenue and return growth for that client. But beyond that client situation, for every company, proactively driving customer retention and growth is vital, because current customers respond more quickly and more often. They spend more on average. So current customers represent every company's fastest path to growth. And yet, so often I see companies assume that after a first purchase or a signed contract, their customers will continue unaided and purchase again and across categories. And that is an extremely expensive assumption when we consider the fierce competition for people's attention. So there was a study in 2007 by the market research firm Yanklevich, and it concluded that Americans are exposed to 5,000 ad messages every day. And there's more recent research that concludes that that number has since doubled. That is an astounding number of messages that we are exposed to on
For
a
sure.
daily, continual basis. So we are in what Nobel laureate Herbert A. Simon called the attention economy. And he went on to note that a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. So if we consider our customers who are continually bombarded by this wealth of information, they can only offer so much attention. So when companies assume that their customers will invest their energy and meager attention to learn about additional products and services that may rightly be incredibly valuable to them, then those companies are making a very risky bet. And they're betting that their current customers will make more effort than they will. And they're betting as well that competitors won't make it easier for customers to buy from them. So the cost of losing that bet is having to perpetually acquire new replacement customers, which costs 5 to 25 times more than marketing and selling to current customers. And they lose the outsized impact that current customers have when they act as companies' salespeople. But instead, when companies understand their customers and what they may need next, and then serve those customers the information that's relevant to that next purchase, then they can break through the noise of 10,000 daily messages and capture attention and quickly drive greater and more cost-efficient revenue.
You brought some really good points, and I kind of think about it from my own personal buying behavior, right? Whenever I'm looking for a good restaurant, I will go online to look at reviews, and that's when I make my decision whether I want to eat at that restaurant or not. So similarly, in whether it's B2C or B2B, people are looking at what other people are saying about that business, right? So it's very important for you to really um, put money behind, or even actual strategies behind, to make sure your customers are you're offering customers value at all times and giving them what they're looking for. And that's where people lose money as well, when a customer would say bad things about a business. It kind of creates that ripple effect in a way. Um, so you touched on customer, but I want to kind of go back to that whole environment we are currently in, right? In this no normal environment where digital transformation is a word that's on every C-suite's mind, what are some of the trends you are seeing as a consultant that will shape the future of digital selling slash marketing?
I absolutely appreciate the appeal of digital transformation because it creates such compelling efficiency. It reduces resource reliance, which allows teams to focus on their highest and best use. It improves the measurability of whatever is being digitized. And of course, it can speed the sales cycle, likely increase revenue and reduce costs. So there is some really important top and bottom line benefits that the companies can realize through digital transformation. And because those benefits are so compelling, it's important not to lose sight of the customer while weighing the benefits of digital transformation. So when companies are considering digitizing a step or even the entire customer lifecycle, digital transformation has to make it easier for customers to become aware, to make purchase decisions, to transact those purchases, and then to become aware of, as we just discussed, to become aware of and consider additional purchases or greater purchases. So if companies digitize product support, for example, but they expect to send their customers to the dreaded community pages for support, they only transfer their obligation to their customers. And burdening customers only opens opportunities for competitors. And I'll give you an example of digital transformation that worked for everyone. I worked with an early stage healthcare technology company that digitized important patient communications. And by digitizing communications, physicians and their offices ensured that they were providing complete and accurate instructions. So physicians and their offices were saved the time and expense of repeating that important information, filling in any blanks. So there was a reduction in non-adherence and the resulting complications. And that same digital transformation served patients and their caregivers as well, because patients could review the important information on their schedules. They could repeat the information to ensure that they were clear. And that, of course, improved adherence and results. And that digital transformation served everyone, the physicians, their offices, and customers, who in this case were patients. So when I'm developing a strategy that includes a recommendation for digital transformation, there is a clear benefit to the company and to their customers, which by extension will always serve the company as well.
Yeah, I mean, it works both ways, right? Not just customers being happy, your employees being more productive and be happy on their job, because the biggest pain point with healthcare professionals is, doing all the admin work and plugging in data manually. So how much you can automate that whole process really helps on both ends.
And that was certainly the case in this example that I offered, right? It sort of saved repeated phone calls. Asking, can you tell me again, what was this detail?
Right.
If someone from the office wasn't present in the conversation with the physician, that it only added a layer of complication. This just streamlined and normalized that communication, and it benefited everyone involved.
Streamline is the way to go, right? Trying to streamline your processes. Um, I want to quote one of your recent posts again on LinkedIn, where you touched on a website related issue that you were having with your own website. And you went down that dreaded rabbit hole with the service provider, which is a common scenario in many business settings. Can you expound on the approach you take to avoid falling down that rabbit hole with your clients and have like a clear path to achieving their desired goals?
Sure. The post that you mentioned was about a service provider giving me incomplete and incorrect information about what turned out to be an issue on their end. But before they had fully diagnosed the issue, they made premature recommendations. And it was before they understood what was really causing the outage. And if I'd followed those recommendations, a couple of them would have been pretty darned expensive. Um, and adding to that, if I had followed their premature advice and spent all that money, nothing would have changed because the issue wasn't on my end.
Right.
And this is the very scenario that I guide clients away from. My objective is to develop the information they need to make informed, confident decisions that have a beneficial and very profitable result. So I'll give you a marketing example. I was working with an enterprise client and reviewing their ongoing measurement. I noticed a significant spike in outbound email volume, and it was quickly followed by a significant spike in email opt outs. And just to put some context around the meaning of those opt outs, let's just say that the cost to acquire those email addresses was about $1 each. So that opt out spike represented hundreds and thousands of dollars of lost investment. And of course, the client lost the opportunity to market and sell to those who'd opted out. So the initial assumption was that the surge in opt outs was caused by the increase in outbound email volume, and the client planned to email less. But given the importance of the decision, I proposed that we develop a better understanding about what drove the opt outs. And it's good that we did because analysis revealed the correlation between opt outs and the long lag time between emails, which averaged about 60 days.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So the increase in email volume wasn't to blame. Not communicating with customers for months. So those customers in that time had either purchased already or they'd forgotten what they were interested in. That's what drove the opt outs. So if we followed that first inclination and emailed less, we would have gone down a rabbit hole and made the problem worse. And this insight was valuable beyond preserving the email investment, as significant as that was, because we now understood as well that we needed to proactively nurture customers and prospective customers who provided their email addresses and learn about them as we did. So instead of taking our lumps from the email opt outs, by developing the right information, we were able to retain and nurture customers and prospective customers and grow revenue from them.
This is a very common scenario that I found, reading about or case studies where customers or even like businesses, when they're the cadence, right? The amount of time you're reaching out to your customer, asking them how they are they happy. So things like net promoter surveys are really helpful in this scenario where you're always keeping a pulse on how your customers feel about your products and solutions and how you're offering them value at each cadence, right? Because it doesn't matter what you're sending, it matters what kind of information you're sending to them on a regular basis, because you always want to provide value.
It's that ever important combination to your point. It's
Yep,
that cadenced communication of relevant information, right? Because
exactly.
that is what will break through the noise of the bombardment of what is altogether too often irrelevant information that's presented to people in those 10,000 daily messages.
Right. To your earlier point that, we are bombarded with so much information on a daily basis, right? So the right content at the right time, at the right medium is very important as well. So I know you touched on this common scenario where, because businesses really lose out on tapping into that opportunity. What are some of the other common themes, Marina, you see as a growth consultant whenever you're working with your clients that really impedes their growth?
When a company is challenged, whether that's with declining revenue or escalating costs or the need to scale efficiently, whatever the challenge is, companies can often double down on what was successful once. And that may include increasing sales targets or having the team work harder. But if companies don't address the root causes that impede growth, then all of that effort won't drive the results that companies need. And among the challenges, the root causes that impede growth typically don't neatly contain themselves to one group or division. They can occur across the company and combine to depress revenue and bloat costs. So if a company is trying to grow by addressing issues just in marketing or just in sales or just in any other group or division, they'll likely be frustrated. And that is among the reasons why I developed an assessment methodology that looks across the company and identifies and fully diagnoses the scope of issues that can limit growth. And from that same methodology, I determine ways to increase revenue. And I often identify new revenue opportunities in the process. So rather than concerted efforts that return suboptimal results, my clients gain data driven, company specific strategy that bridges their starting point to their goal and quickly drives steady revenue growth.
I really like that because I remember this brings me, I remember this because I worked with a client in the past where um, you know they were not actively listening to their customers, and their customers were coming back to them on through their finance department, giving them all these pain points that they're not really happy with the business. But because that department wasn't sharing that information with other departments, it was siloed in one place. So, to your point that, departments need to talk to each other and communicate in a way that really helps the business move forward. So, with that note, I want to thank you for your time and all these insights you've offered us. This has been an apt conversation in the current scenario we are in. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights and for your time as well. Thank you,
It was a
Marina.
pleasure. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.